Okay, so we have to talk about the rank 1 Milio player. The champion Milio has all the tools a strong supporter could ever ask for, which means with this champion you will always dominate late game fights. Your huge AoE buffs and clutch saves will make your entire team look unbeatable. But how do you actually get there consistently without getting punished for your weak early game? Well, let's have a look at how the rank 1 Milio does it. The Korean solo queue player Wangjanimjae has actually kinda been hard stuck in Diamond this season, but as soon as Milio got released, he immediately shot up to Master with a 76% win rate on the champion, also climbing to rank 1 on the Milio leaderboards. And in this video I will show you exactly how he does it, going over the optimal runes and items as well as a step-by-step gameplay analysis. The optimal Milio rune page used by the rank 1 Milio player every single game is Summon Eerie, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence and Scorch with Bone Plating and Revitalize secondary. Summon Eerie will always be a strong keystone on any champion who can make use of both the damage and the shielding part. The benefit of Eerie's damage should be self-explanatory. Milio most commonly trades in lane by casting E on himself while auto-attacking an enemy champion. E's shield prevents them from effectively trading back, while Milio's auto-attack procs both Eerie and his passive so he can deal meaningful damage himself. But Eerie's shielding is the truly crazy part, especially in late game teamfights, as you're about to see. Pretty much anything you do to buff an ally, including your E, your ultimate and even your W, will trigger Eerie to go shield them over and over again. Best keystone for Milio by far, which is why the rank 1 player takes it. Mana Flow Band is actually kind of weird, as it both doesn't fix your early mana problems while also being hard to stack since you need to be careful to not waste your Q. However, Mana Flow Band is crucial for the late game because your team fighting entirely consists of spamming your buffs on allies, and in the late game the extra mana truly makes a difference for that. Transcendence is another scaling rune, and while your spells of course have some AP ratios on them, their base values makes most of their impact, which means ability haste is Milio's strongest stat for the late game. Additionally, enchanters tend to get lots of assists, and Milio is no exception. This makes him a potent user of the 20% remaining cooldown refund upon takedown this rune provides after reaching level 11. In the last slot, the rank 1 player takes Scorch, but not because Scorch would be particularly good on Milio. In fact, it is almost a trap, baiting you into wasting your Q for poke to trigger Scorch's damage. However, during early fights, the damage on Scorch matters a lot, and in the late game where, say, Gathering Storm would kick into gear, you will be hard winning anyway due to Milio's natural scaling. Gathering Storm would be a win more rune, but Scorch impacts the lane where you need its help the most. Bone Plating is another rune that will help you survive that crucial lane phase for a smooth transition into the late game, as Milio is generally speaking an easy target. You mainly take it though because it is the next best thing on the resolve path, since you really need to be here for Revitalize. This rune amplifies all of your spells during all stages of the game, except for Q, making it a must pick. By the way, keep in mind that if you want to have educational league content like this in your personal feed, all you need to do is click the subscribe button. For items, the rank 1 player of course starts with Spell Thief's Edge, and the core items are always Shurelia's Battle Song and Ardent Censer. Well, you rush Lucidity Boots first and foremost, since movement speed is an important defensive stat for an immobile enchanter, and you need all the protection you can get. Kiting with movement speed is your main line of defense, and tier 2 boots in combination with a self-cast E speeding you up even further makes Milio surprisingly hard to catch. On the same note, you also use the movement speed from your E on your allies to make them harder to deal with for the enemy, and Shurelia's Battle Song amplifies that even more. The active is of course perfect for engage and disengage, but a lot of the item's value is the passive extra movement speed it provides whenever you buff an ally, aka whenever your keystone triggers, which is pretty much always. Shurelia is the best power spike you will have all game, and with just this item you can truly start taking over the match. In fact, the rank 1 player hardly gets more items than this one, and instead spends all his extra gold on control wards. But his next full item will always be Ardent Censer, should he get to that point. Milio has to stay next to his AD carry in fights anyway for maximum value from W, and Ardent Censor's auto-attack buff of course plays very naturally into what Milio wants to be doing anyway. The final item before you conclude with Wardstone will usually be Staff of Flowing Water, helping the casters on your team in a similar fashion, but situational items like Chemtech Putrefier and Mikhail's Blessing work too. Anyway, let's now have a close look at WangJaNimJ's in-game decision-making, since this is the most important aspect of playing Milio. Milio's lane pressure is all about trading with his E. Since the ability holds up to 2 charges, you should never sit on full stacks. By casting the shield on yourself, you protect yourself from damage while also amplifying your auto-attack with your passive, making for an excellent trading tool. You'll still have the other charge of your shield left, just in case, and this way you let the spell's stacking system work for you rather than letting it go to waste. However, keep in mind that Milio shines during mid and late game teamfights, so there is no pressure on you to greed for plays during the lane phase. The rank 1 player stays rather safe early to more consistently reach his godlike late game. He specifically always saves Milio's Q spell for disengage, as it is his only peeling tool. The importance of this can be seen here. The Q knockback completely turned the situation around, denying Echo's gank. You should always hold on to Q's cooldown so you have it available to counter the enemy's early aggression. So Milio is a great disengage champion, but what do you bring to the table when your team is on the offensive? Actually, many Milio players go wrong here, so please have a close look at the rank 1 player's positioning in this fight. Yes, you literally just sit back and cast your W and your shields to buff your ADC as much as possible. You also do not use Q during the fight, since it might even knock the enemy towards safety, which is not desirable, and you need to keep the spell ready anyway in case an enemy tries to get on top of you. Many Milio players position way too aggressively in situations like this, when staying far back and just using W and E is 100% the correct call. However, there are instances where Milio wants to use his Q aggressively, as the spell slow can be used to set up all-ins against champions that lack mobility. In this situation, the rank 1 player sees on the minimap that Echo is busy farming the jungle, which means there is a 0% chance he will need Q for disengage right now. Therefore, he goes for a fancy trick shot, and when the slow lands, all he has to do is spam his buffs on Lucian. Using ultimate there just to refresh Milio's passive damage was definitely overkill though, but it is a split-second decision and hindsight is always just that. Entering the mid-game, however, we can now talk a little bit more about Milio's ult usage. At this stage, all the team fighting and skirmishing starts, and Milio just loves it when the teams are grouped and ready to fight. And of course, the big power fantasy is always to get a huge 5-man ultimate off, cleansing your team out of an AoE stun for maximum value. But in the reality of solo queue, situations like that will hardly ever arise, so knowing when you should ult in a more average game is really important. Please pay close attention to the rank 1 player's spell usage, and especially ultimate usage in this teamfight right there. Using W on your AD carry and shielding allies with E when they are under attack is self-explanatory, but it is extremely important to find the right time to ult. Instead of waiting for a highlight play that likely never comes, the rank 1 player simply pressed ult to just heal 3 allies and buff them with his passive. Think of it more like a bursty Janna ultimate. However, as defensive and reactive as Milio's kit might look, don't be fooled. Milio has tons of indirect engage power, which means it is sometimes hard to appreciate in the chaos that are solo queue teamfights, but it is definitely a very real game-winning impact. By indirect engage power, I mean that while Milio does not run down the enemy himself, he allows his teammates to do so with his incredible movement speed buffs. You don't just max your E first to increase the shield size and get a lower cooldown, but also to grow the bonus movement speed on the spell to a massive 25%. Your rank 5 E by itself turns any AD carry into an unkillable, unavoidable kiting monster, and you even get your mythic items passive on top of that. Again, arguably a panic ult, but the shield strength from E took enough damage away from Echo's combo to deny him the one-shot on Lucian. As you can see, the enemy will likely not even know that Milio did all the carrying, since he just makes his teammates look OP. But in reality, it is Milio himself who is OP. He might not be the flashiest champion on the Rift, but he is still the perfect supporter for you if all you care about is winning. If you are more a fan of fancy outplays, however, I've also analyzed the rank 1 Samira player, and you can see that by clicking the link on your screen right there.